This short video looks at how students can learn effectively at GCSE. We're lucky at Northgate that we've been working with exam study experts to look at the science behind effective learning and how to master memory. And we've also surveyed all of our students, and we've taken part in a big national survey which has looked at student study habits. And there's some recommendations that have come out of that I want to share with you in this video. So it's very clear that to be a successful learner, students need three things. They need motivation. Now, good careers advice can really help here, having a clear goal of where you want to go after GCSE. So that might be because you really love certain subjects and you want to do them at A level. It might be that you really want to go onto a college course or a certain apprenticeship or a certain career. So having clear goals is really, really important. Coaching is also important, and that's where teachers come in, and that's where our Year 10 students need to take full advantage of lessons and really focus in lessons. And then at home, independently, they need to practice, but that practice needs to be purposeful. So they need to be regularly quizzing themselves, testing themselves, going back over what they've learned in lessons. It's not really a case of how many hours they put in, it's about using the right techniques. We've only learned what we can remember. So it's really, really important to look at long-term memory and to think, can I really remember what I've been covering in my lessons? In terms of motivation, Year 10 are now starting on their GCSE, so hopefully it's going to lead to good qualifications. They also leave Northgate School with a reference, and that's very important because employers, colleges and universities, they're looking for people with really good study habits. Students who can provide evidence that they can learn effectively, learn new skills, but students that don't give up, students that show determination, resilience, and that reference is absolutely crucial. Just as important as the qualifications students get is that reference that they'll take with them from Northgate School. So the first thing that students need to do is regularly test themselves and quiz themselves. So all of the successful students that I've interviewed and looking at the 2020 National Revision Census, those students that are doing well are regularly using past papers, practicing exam questions. They're using quizzing apps such as Cram or Quizlet to test their knowledge of what they've been studying. They work with parents or friends to test each other, perhaps using flashcards. And they try and create diagrams or mind maps on blank sheets of paper from memory, rather than simply just getting a revision book or their notes and just reading through them and highlighting key things. They're actually trying to recall information. So retrieval practice is by far the most powerful learning strategy known to psychologists. Studies have shown that students who test themselves regularly recall 50% more than those who just simply read through their notes. So what we're looking for is effortful retrieval. If you look at the diagram on the right, that if a student wants to learn effectively, they start with a quiz or maybe a past paper or a practice question. They try and do that from memory. They then identify what topics they're weak on and they do something about it. They maybe produce some flashcards on the things that they can't remember, and then they test themselves on the information on those flashcards. And that gradually over time their memory of the key topics becomes stronger. So retrieval practice is really important. If we try and remember something, we get it right, that's great. It's showing that our memory is becoming stronger. But it's also okay to make mistakes. If you remember something inaccurately or if you simply didn't know, it shows you where to focus your study. It shows you what you should be spending your time doing at home. Also, we're hardwired as individuals to learn from our mistakes. So getting things wrong in a quiz or a test is good, so long as we then show that resilience and determination to do something about it. What's clearly been shown in the National Revision Census is that students can spend a heck of a lot of time using techniques for learning and revising that aren't really that effective. So you'll note if you look next to the red box that 19% of students think that they can revise just by reading through their notes, and that's not effective at all. Going through and highlighting things isn't effective. Just simply making notes won't help you learn really effectively. So what we need to be doing as parents and teachers is pushing students to those techniques in the green box, regularly using practice questions, using flashcards with questions on one side and the answers on the other to test themselves. Paired testing, quizzing apps, and blank page retrieval really, really effective. The second key tip is that we must space our learning out. So we can think that we're doing really well if we study something and then almost immediately we test ourselves on it. We're likely to do pretty well. But the key to getting things into your memory is not to let that forgetting curve that you can see on the graph happen. Over time, memory will fade, and we need to regularly come back to key topics, key things we need to learn multiple times in order to make sure that our memories don't fade over time. So students need to think very carefully about revisiting things that they did 2 weeks ago, a month ago, 6 months ago, to make sure that that remains fresh in their memory. And the real key thing is that successful students at GCSE don't leave it all to the last minute and then cram in year 11. That doesn't work with the amount of subjects that they have to cover. So a good student would see learning and revision as being the same thing, and they'd be starting now. Most successful GCSE students spend 10 to 12 hours studying outside of lessons. So that's a couple of hours each evening doing homework, going back over old topics, practicing their exam techniques, all of those things that I've been talking about. The key is to use good techniques. 10 to 12 hours should be enough. Doing a little bit of work on either a Saturday or a Sunday is really helpful. But you can work too hard. So we're not suggesting that students do 4 hours in an evening, because they will burn themselves out and then they won't be fresh to learn the next day. So yes, work hard, use the right techniques, but there's a caveat there: don't work too hard. The other thing when you're studying is to stay focused. Particularly phones are a massive distraction. In the national survey, over 50% of students admitted to regularly checking their phones whilst doing homework. Even worse, regularly checking their phones whilst trying to remember, whilst trying to revise. And the average student loses 8 minutes out of every study hour because of smartphone distraction. The other things that can lead to weaker studying and create problems with learning is a lack of a decent breakfast. Taking exercise, taking regular breaks really, really does help. And having somewhere quiet, peaceful to study so they can really focus is also another key thing to be aware of. So as a parent, what are we looking for in terms of how our students are studying? Be wary of just seeing loads of detailed notes with pretty colours. You need to be careful here. Effective flashcards need to link into all of the techniques that we've been talking about. So the key thing here is to regularly use the flashcards to test yourself. Now, lots of students use flashcards, and they're used in the right way. They're really, really effective. But sadly, 41% simply just make the cards or read through them. That isn't effective. So what they need to be doing is that they must put a question on one side and then the answer on the other, and either then test themselves or get someone to test them at home or quiz a friend. Now, flashcards can be brilliant for remembering formula, answers to questions, remembering names, dates. They can help you learn lists. They can help you remember diagrams. One technique that's been really effective for the students at Northgate is to make flashcards right from the start of the course, right from the start of year 10, and to build them up, snowball them during their GCSE studies in year 10 and year 11. And then always using those flashcards to test themselves and quiz themselves, and maybe having 3 piles of those flashcards. If they can't remember what's on the flashcard when they come back to trying to test themselves on it after a couple of days perhaps, that goes on the red pile. That means that they don't know the information and that they need to be testing themselves regularly on that information. If they know most of the stuff in a pack of flashcards, or they can remember most of the stuff on the other side, then that can go on to an amber pile. Now, that means they remember most of it, so maybe they come back to that pile once a week. And then the green box, or the green pile of cards, is the ones that they're regularly getting right. So what you can do here is perhaps come back to those cards every month. It's really important, though, to still come back to them so that what you've learned doesn't disappear from your memory. Mrs. Hallett has kindly done a video for parents and for students on how to use GCSE Pod. Once again, simply listening to the pods isn't enough. There's some really good quizzes and multiple choice quizzes on GCSE Pod. You can use those, or you can test yourself or quiz yourself in some way, and then use GCSE Pod to make some good revision notes or make some flashcards on what you don't know. So use GCSE Pod in the right way. Sometimes students will set GCSE Pods for homework so that they can come to the lesson prepared, having done some research. So my big 2 messages are retrieval practice. Regularly practicing trying to pull information out of your memory is fantastic for learning. Spacing your learning out over time, so you don't just do a topic one week and never come back to it, but think about, when am I going to return to that topic? In a week's time, a month's time, 4 or 5 months down the line. That's really important as well, so our memory of that topic doesn't fade. And just lastly, just remember Northgate's 5 R's, and this is what we feel, and this is shown by successful students that we have go through our school and they go on and they do well at A-levels, or they get advanced level apprenticeships. They've got these 5 R's, which is they will come to a lesson having done some research, having found some things out. They'll read around a topic, or they'll watch documentaries, or they'll listen to podcasts. They'll show a real interest in the subject. They will regularly test themselves on what they know, work out what they couldn't remember, and then do something about it. They really will take responsibility for their learning. Successful students also regularly respond to feedback from their teacher, and they reflect. They work out what they're struggling with, and then they share that with their teacher. So if they're using the 5 R's and they're using those 2 big techniques of retrieval practice and spaced learning, they should do really well at GCSE. Like I said, it's a case of working smarter, not necessarily working harder, but also you have got to study enough. Really, really important that GCSE students should be spending a couple of hours each evening, perhaps having a Friday or a Saturday off, and then a bit more work on the Sunday. Really important that they get into good study habits as well. If you're interested in anything that I've gone over and you want more information, there's more information on our website, but I would recommend the Exam Study Expert website and the podcasts on there. Because, like I said, this is written by people who've spent their whole life studying how to learn effectively, and the advice is excellent. So I hope that helps. Thank you very much for listening, and I think working in partnership between the school, parents and students, we can get some fantastic results for this year's Year 10.